Entering the 1971 draft, the number 1 pick was said to be the best pro quarterback prospect ever. Yet within 5 years, he was off the team with a stat sheet that looked like this. But just when his story seemed over, Jim Plunkett pulled off the impossible, going from a surefire bust to a Super Bowl legend. Jim Plunkett had just completed a historic college career, setting a then NCAA record in career passing yards, so it wasn't a surprise that he was drafted first overall by the Patriots. But as an article put it at the time, historically, Heisman winners have not fared well in the pros. That theory would be tested immediately. The Patriots' first game was against the Oakland Raiders, one of the best teams in the NFL. The Raiders would actually finish that season as the second highest scoring offense. Yet the Patriots defense held them to 1 touchdown, with the Raiders going as far to unsuccessfully try 3 different quarterbacks, who combined for 11 completions. Plunkett himself only completed 6 passes, but he threw 2 touchdowns and helped pull off a massive upset. Within a couple weeks, newspapers were comparing him to Joe Namath.
He was the Patriots' future, the man who could single-handedly turn a losing franchise around.
The excitement was understandable. The Patriots had gone 2-12 in 1970 and 1-5 in the preseason, so expectations were low. Fast forward to week 12, the Patriots sat at 4-7. They're hosting the Super Bowl-bound Miami Dolphins, who they already lost to in week 5. Today, Plunkett was excellent, and the defense forced 5 turnovers. They pulled off another massive upset. But they weren't done. In the final week of the season, they were in Baltimore to play the Colts. The Colts would reach the AFC title game, where they lost to the Dolphins, who went to the Super Bowl, and they had the 2nd best defense and 5th best offense. But the Patriots have Jim Plunkett, so they pulled off yet another upset. Plunkett had just completed a season, throwing for over 2,000 yards and 19 touchdowns. That was the 2nd highest that season, and also the 2nd most in NFL history thrown by a rookie. Such a season earned him Rookie of the Year. The Patriots did go 6-8, but they also went 13, 42, and 1 the previous 4 seasons, so 1971 actually offered some hope. But the truth was, the Patriots were still a bad team. Plunkett's great rookie year masked over some major problems. In 1972, the defense was historically bad. They allowed 32 points a game, which was 5 more than the 2nd worst team. After a red-hot rookie season, Plunkett could not overcome such a bad defense. It didn't help that he threw 8 touchdowns and 25 interceptions. That gave the Patriots a negative 254 point differential, which ranked 2nd worst in NFL history for a 14-game season. The only team worse was the winless Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 1976. Another problem that was clear even in 1971 was the porous offensive line. Plunkett was getting battered in the pocket each week. All those hits led to a series of injuries. From 6-8 and hopeful to 3-11 and despondent. With that, Chuck Fairbanks was hired as the Patriots' new head coach. But with Fairbanks came his love for the wishbone option offense, which requires a more mobile quarterback. Plunkett, however, was a drop-back passer.
When Chuck Fairbanks came in, he was a college coach with a college mentality. Well, I like the option, and we're going to make you run a little bit more. Well, there couldn't have been a more plow horse guy than Jim Plunkett. He could do a lot of things with the football, but run with it wasn't one of them.
Still, Fairbanks set a new tone. Plunkett adjusted, and while the Patriots went 5-9, it was an improvement. Just take what you can get at this point. Then, in 1974, the Patriots went on an absolute heater. Midway through the season, they had the best offense in the league and top 10 defense, that finished 4th in sacks. The Patriots' O-line also got better at stopping the sack. With the emergence of John Hanna and Leon Gray, sacks dropped from 37 to 21 in 1974. An improved run game took some pressure off Plunkett, but he also reminded everybody of the talent that he had. That included a last-second comeback win against the Vikings in Week 7, who had just been to the Super Bowl and would return that year. However, on this game-winning play, tight end Bob Windsor suffered a season-ending knee injury. It would be one of many injuries that decimated the team. As those injuries piled up, the season unraveled, from a 6-1 start to a 7-7 finish.
1975, Jim Plunkett and the Patriots can only get better.
The optimism was well placed, because the Patriots were the hottest team in the league before injury struck. If they remained healthy, they were going to the playoffs. So 1975, everybody got healthy and they continued that momentum, right? The Patriots had a pass protection problem. It did improve in 1974, but by then it was a little late. From 1971 to 1973, Plunkett was sacked a league-high 112 times. The only other player close to that number was Archie Manning, who also had a historically bad offensive line. With all those hits piling up, a serious injury was inevitable. Plunkett would suffer a separated shoulder and knee injury, which put him out for most of the 1975 season. His backup was rookie Steve Grogan. The Patriots regressed to 3-11, but Grogan was more mobile and therefore better suited to Fairbanks' option offense. Plunkett, on the other hand, was a battered quarterback, mentally and physically. Not wanting to run the option and continue being a human piñata, he requested a trade. He was sent to the 49ers in 1976 for backup QB Tom Owen, 3 first-rounders and a second-rounder. He left behind an unproductive resume in New England, a 23-38 record as a starter, 62 touchdowns, and 87 interceptions. But the 49ers wanted him.
Jim, I think, will bring us leadership, both from his performance on and off the field, his presence here, solidifying the quarterback situation, and for us to achieve what we hope to achieve together, we need to have a man at the helm that can lead us.
And initially it looked like he was a perfect fit. They got off to a red-hot 6-1 start, but from week 8 something changed. Take a look at his numbers up until week 7 and then after. There were some reports that his shoulder was sore, but he played through it and eventually recovered. However, he seemed to lose accuracy later in the season. The defense also took a sharp drop in productivity in the second half of the season. From week 1 to 7, they were first in fewest points allowed, but then dropped to 14th in fewest points allowed the final 7 games. That was in part due to injuries. But the drop-off came at the wrong time, because the 49ers' schedule was much harder the second half of the season. The average win percentage of teams their first 7 weeks was 36%, and it increased to 57% the second half. The tougher competition could also be why the team started playing worse. Plunkett hadn't been great that season. He threw 13 touchdowns to 16 interceptions, even getting benched a couple games for a rookie. By the end, they finished with an 8-6 record, 2-5 down the stretch. But that's still a winning season. There was evidence they could improve. In 1977, the 49ers were sold to a new owner. With that came a new general manager, Joe Thomas. He had previous success as an executive with the Vikings, Dolphins, and Colts, but he also had a reputation. As one writer put it, he'll trade enough players, fire enough coaches, and stomp on enough toes to split 49ers fans into 2 camps, those who love him and those who hate him. His first move was Canning head coach Monty Clark. In fairness, they wanted to keep Clark, but his contract gave him full authority over team operations. Thomas wanted the final say, so when Clark refused to renegotiate the terms, he was fired. That did not help. They started 0-5 in 1977 and finished 5-9. So in a crazy move, Thomas made one of the worst trades, giving up 5 draft choices for a washed-up O.J. Simpson in 1978. Plunkett could not escape the chaos. Given he threw 9 touchdowns against 14 interceptions, his days were numbered. After giving up 3 first-rounders, just 2 years prior, the 49ers cut Plunkett before the 1978 season. For a couple weeks, Plunkett was jobless.
I received some phone calls from other clubs, and I wasn't so sure this is what I wanted to do anymore. I felt like I'd had it.
Now 10 years into his career, with all this hype coming into the NFL, many consider Plunkett one of the NFL's all-time draft busts. Enter Al Davis and the Oakland Raiders, the sanctuary for NFL outcasts. Plunkett signed with them. However, he was a backup. He threw 15 passes in 2 years. Now heading into the 1980 season, he was 33. Time is ticking for a comeback. Absolutely defeated, he asked to be traded, but Al Davis refused. They needed a veteran if anything happened to their starting quarterback. And then, it did. In week 5 of the 1980 season, Dan Pastorini broke his leg. Plunkett took over. Finally, his redemption story begins. Oh my god, he just threw 5 interceptions. The only thing going for Plunkett was that the Raiders had no better options. They didn't think their rookie, Mark Wilson, was ready, so Plunkett had the starting role. For now. A wise man once said, "You only get one shot, do not miss your chance to blow."
But I also realized that after 2 years of sitting on the bench behind Kenny Stabler, finally got my opportunity in 1980, that, if I didn't go out and perform, if I didn't make something happen, I probably would be out of football next. And so, I finally made it very clear to myself in my own mind that I'm going to stand in that pocket, I'm going to hold that ball to the last possible second. I'm going to make this work for me. If I don't, I might not be able to play again.
So the Raiders sat at 2-3 heading into week 6. From 1933 to 1979, there were 199 teams that started their season 2-3. 16 made the playoffs. So by those numbers, the Raiders had an 8% chance to just make the playoffs. Plunkett could not have had a tougher start. His first game came against the Chargers, one of the league's best offenses. Oh, no problem. But the next week, he had to beat the defending Super Bowl champs. Oh, no problem again.
We told you at the beginning of the telecast that Plunkett is back. We told you when he was 1 for 7, the figures were deceptive. Yes, Jim Plunkett is back.
Oh, he's back, baby. The Raiders continued rolling as Plunkett rallied them to a 9-2 finish, the same team that was projected to come fourth in their division at the start of the season. Plunkett, at 33, had finally pulled off his first winning season as a starter. Now in the playoffs, the Raiders continued riding that momentum. It started against the Oilers, with the Raiders comfortably winning 27-7. Then they arrived in Cleveland, in a game forever remembered as Red Riot 88. The Raiders were holding on to a 14-12 lead late in the game. The Browns had driven down to the Raiders' 13-yard line. Despite there being less than a minute remaining, the Browns had missed 2 field goals already, so instead they called a play. Red Riot 88. As the ball made its way into the end zone, safety Mike Davis, known for having cement hands, made the game-winning interception. The Raiders would upgrade to 67 degrees in sunny San Diego for the AFC title game. Having already beaten the Chargers earlier that season, they were confident but not complacent. Despite being sacked 6 times, Plunkett had a strong outing with 261 yards and 2 touchdowns, out-dueling Dan Fouts in a 34-27 victory. They were now the first wildcard team to make it to the Super Bowl, facing the Eagles, who they had lost to in Week 12. This time, however, the Raiders dominated. Plunkett delivered early with a touchdown pass to Kenny King that went for a then Super Bowl record of 80 yards.
Back is Plunkett. Time to throw. Deep to the end zone to Branch. It is caught by Branch. Touchdown Raiders!
Plunkett won Super Bowl MVP and became the first minority quarterback to win a Super Bowl. That completed arguably the greatest comeback story ever. A former number 1 pick, thought to be a bust, who then sat on the bench for 2 years, only to lead a wildcard team to a Super Bowl win. The only teams to start 2-3 and win the Super Bowl, the 1980 Raiders and the 2001 Patriots, in Tom Brady's first season. 1981 was a typical Super Bowl hangover, but by 1982, despite the playoff upset, the Raiders were back. However, entering 1983, that was not true for Plunkett. The Raiders were winning, but after a 2-point loss to the Seahawks, where Plunkett threw 3 interceptions, he was benched. Now, the 3rd oldest quarterback in the league, it looked like it was over, for real this time. But an injury to Mark Wilson in Week 10, 3 weeks later, sent Plunkett back in as the starter. The short reset was clearly enough. He was like a new guy. He was fresh, crisp, he moved better in the pocket. It was like he had a shot of adrenaline or something. He helped the Raiders finish 12-4, march through the playoffs, and back to another Super Bowl. This time to face the then highest scoring offense in NFL history, the Washington Redskins, a team they had already lost to 37-35 in a shootout earlier that year. But in 1983, the team's success had been on the back of a dominant defense and Marcus Allen. That could not have been clearer than in the Super Bowl. The defense, while statistically a little worse, saw upgrades to their roster, such as Howie Long and Lyle Alzado. The addition of Mike Haynes created one of the greatest cornerback duos with Lester Hayes in NFL history. They'd be tested against the Redskins' offensive line, that had allowed the 7th fewest sacks that season, while the Raiders sacked him 6 times. It was the second time they did that, so the Redskins obviously did not learn. Then they had to deal with John Riggins. He had just rushed for a career high, almost 1,400 yards, as well as a league high 24 touchdowns. In his playoff career, he averaged 110 yards a game. Today, however, he was a non-factor, and the pass wasn't an option for Joe Theismann. Star receivers Art Monk and Charlie Brown were locked down with just 4 receptions between them. On the offensive side, despite going against the NFL's best rushing defense, Marcus Allen feasted. He didn't actually have a great regular season. He barely cracked 1,000 yards and averaged just 3.8 per attempt. But he activated playoff mode, as his yards per attempt jumped to 8 and yards per game to 155. And in the Super Bowl, he set a then record of 191 rushing yards. Comparing 1980 to 1983, you can see the difference in offensive output. With that, the Raiders routed the Redskins 38-9. While Plunkett's numbers may have taken a dip, he brought more to the team. He was an excellent leader and thrived under pressure. Mark Wilson was not taking this team to a Super Bowl. Over the next few years, Plunkett would deal with more injuries. He had just 17 starts from 1984 to 1986, and he ultimately retired in 1988. He had left behind a memorable career, but was it Hall of Fame worthy? I think that question deserves its own video, so I'll leave my thoughts for another day, but let me know what you think. That being said, Jim Plunkett's life and career have been a series of peaks and valleys. Success, despite massive setbacks, might be the best description. He went from a can't-miss number 1 prospect to an epic disappointment to Super Bowl hero all in the span of a decade. Truly an all-time great comeback story.